A couple of potential Colts really stood out at the Notre Dame Pro Day, and Andrew and I were there to tell you all about the action. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 back if your bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. What is up, everybody? Jake Arthur and Andrew Moore with you today from horseshoehuddle.com. And we have been on the road this week, guys. We went and told you about what we saw at Toledo. And then Andrew, Drake, Wally, and myself were all out at Notre Dame's Pro Day this week as well. So we're going to go ahead and let you know what we saw there. Because obviously with Notre Dame, they have more draftable guys there. There's more guys that fit the Colts. So we got plenty to talk about. We'll go ahead and start with the headliners. The guys who pretty good chance they're going to hear their names called within the first couple of days, and then we'll tell you who kind of stood out among the rest of them. So we'll start with Joe Alt, Cam Hart, and Audric Estime. Alt doesn't really factor into the Colts whatsoever, but he's the top prospect. He's pretty much locked into a top 10 pick. So again, doesn't factor in for the Colts, but I thought he still looked really good. Him and Blake Fisher were the only two offensive linemen working out, and you could tell which one of them was going to be the top 10 pick.
Yeah, you really could. And just to see the number of offensive line coaches that were really up close to see Joe Alt work. I mean, you're talking about the Los Angeles Chargers, the New England Patriots, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Denver Broncos. Those were just a few of the offensive line coaches that really wanted to get up close to see Joe Alt. And you could just famous Chris Ballard saying is you could feel it. Well, you could feel Joe Alt out there, massive human being, but he's quick. You can tell he's athletic, and you just see the fluidity that he has at the offensive line position. I think he's pretty much locked in as a top 10 pick, probably the first offensive lineman off the board once we get to April. And really, he could go anywhere from number 5 to the Los Angeles Chargers, all the way down to probably number 10 with the New York Jets. So I would honestly be shocked if Joe Alt didn't get out of that top 10. But yeah, great player. He's going to be a franchise left or right tackle for whoever takes him for years to come.
Yeah, and we talked to him afterward. He said there are some teams that see him on the left or right side, at least maybe initially on the right before kicking over to the left. But despite all the noise, all the mock drafts and buzz and everything, he's just trying to kind of keep his head down and look forward. I would urge teams not to overthink this. Just because Joe Alt is the safe bet doesn't mean that there's not also like a ton of upside there. Like if you want your cornerstone left tackle for the next 10, 12 years, whatever, you go ahead and put Joe Alt on the draft card. But looking at a couple guys that really fit the Colts, I think pretty well, Cam Hart and Audric Estime. So we'll start with Estime because Hart, we didn't even know if he was going to do anything until like the very end. So the big issue with Audric was the tape was great. Most of the athletic testing looked really good. The field workout at the combine was good, but he ran that 4.7 at the combine, which was puzzling because he's not a burner, but his tape doesn't say 4.7. And then here he comes. I don't know if it was just a bad day or whatever out in Indy at the combine, but Notre Dame clocked him at an official 4.58. You and I timed him as well. I think I had 4.54 on both of his runs. You had 4.51, I think.
Yes.
So we had pretty good times on him. And, between us and the scouts, we all had in the 4.5s. So I think he made himself some money, maybe the difference of an entire round, because the tape doesn't lie. But at the same time, if a guy's running a 4.7, that's pretty telling. So if he came out again at the pro day and ran high 4.6s and the 4.7s, whatever, that was going to be a huge issue. So now teams know that he has decent speed to go with all the tackle breaking and everything else you see, pass protection, the athleticism we saw to hurdle things like that. They simulated him, hitting the hole, getting through the garbage, and hurdling what a would-be linebacker during his drills as well. They really wanted to kind of show off everything he could do. And he was also one of the primary pass catchers for Sam Hartman later in the day as well.
Yeah, I think he definitely made himself some money. When you saw his 40 at the combine, I mean, that was concerning, because it just didn't match the film, so he comes out Notre Dame Pro Day and he runs that 4.5. That's about what you would expect. He's not a burner by any means. He's more of a big bruising running back, but he can still, once he gets in the open field, he can be hard to catch. So yeah, I definitely feel like he improved on that. And then we even asked him, why such a difference between what you ran at the combine versus today? And he just said, some days you just have off days. He was very honest about it, which I thought was really good. He said, this is probably something he's never going to have to run again in his life. So he's glad he was able to improve and show teams that what happened at the combine was just an anomaly. So when you look at the tape, I mean, if I don't necessarily think that the Colts will be looking to add a running back in the draft for where Estime is likely to go, third, fourth round. But I think he would be a great fit to back up Jonathan Taylor. He shows that he can pick up the tough yardage. He's quick in and out of his cuts, definitely athletic. And while he's not necessarily a burner like Jonathan Taylor, he can pick up those tough yardages. And he's not going to be a guy that normally gets stopped at the line of scrimmage. He's going to pick up 2 to 3 yards just because of his physicality, so yeah, I thought he did a great job. Like you said, definitely earned himself some money, and I think established himself as a mid-round pick in this April's draft.
Yeah, this is a weird year for running backs. There's really no uniformity to people's rankings. You could throw 5 different running backs on the board from anywhere you see round 1 to 7, and there's going to be teams with any of those guys in their top 3. This is just a really weird year for that. So you don't know where he's really ranked most commonly, but one thing I know for sure is if that 4.7 was going to stand, he was probably going to be a later day 3 guy. So he definitely helped himself out. I didn't initially think the Colts would really be into a running back, but we know they wanted Zach Moss back, but just at the right price. And then the fact they were in on A.J. Dillon, I thought was interesting. So if you want a guy cut from a similar cloth, Estime makes sense. He's a 3-down back. I mean, he's not got all the juice that Jonathan Taylor does, obviously, but he probably offers more than anything else you've got behind Taylor on the roster. And then a guy who makes a lot of sense early for the Colts, as early as day 2, round 2, we think, Cam Hart. Now, a pleasant surprise because for a while we didn't think he was going to work out. He's kind of just, in just regular, casual clothes and had a hat on and stuff and wasn't doing anything until later in the day. Finally started loosening up. He did just the field workouts, but man, did he look good. He gave major Juju Brents vibes too. Like he's a big, lengthy guy. And just the way he moved, we were watching his hips closely when he was doing the back pedal things and then the, back pedal into the interception drills. And he just looked smooth out there. Again, like with Joe Alton, Blake Fisher, there were a few defensive backs out there, but there was one who was clearly going to be an early pick in the NFL draft. And I mean, that includes Thomas Harper, who had a great day otherwise. But no, I thought in the small sample size we saw Cam Hart, I thought he looked really good and put a beautiful bow on what has been a really, really good pre-draft process for him.
He really does remind you of Juju Brents. I mean, the way he moves, even his athletic profile is kind of similar, 6'3", 200 pounds, real long arms and legs, and just his ability to, he's not going to be a burner per se. He's not a 4.3 guy, but he can cover a lot of ground very, very quickly because of those long strides, and that's something that I really wanted to pay attention to yesterday was how quickly he was able to kind of turn his hips, because with those bigger corners, that can be kind of an issue. But I saw what I saw yesterday. it really looked good. It looked smooth. He was able to cover ground. We've seen what he has done at Notre Dame, going up against high quality competition. That game this past season where he went up against Marvin Harrison Jr. was one of Cam Hart's best games at Notre Dame. So the tape is really good. And if the Colts are looking to add another cornerback in the same mold as a Juju Brents, if round two for Cam Hart, I mean, very well could be the spot, 46 if the Colts trade back. At this point, it's I think you're kind of risking it if you're waiting for Cam Hart to be available in round 3. It seems like the longer we go and the more teams look into him, he's getting more and more buzz and starting to shoot up draft boards.
Let's go ahead and pause this real quick. Never mind, we're live. Can't pause it. That's showbiz, baby. Anyways, let's close the door. Oh, I love going live so much. It is my favorite. All right, so after this, we're going to talk about some of the other guys who really, really stood out and probably made themselves maybe a little money and fit the Colts pretty well as well. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you have an extra hour in your day? Put your dog away for an extended period of time. Make sure they get some extra outside time. I'm certainly considering that right now. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy, which my dog needs desperately, can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And it's tourney time, so say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. We've already got some really interesting stuff going on. It just started yesterday. So whether you're betting on a big upset or on a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. I am just in disbelief right now, everybody, but we're going to move past it. So there were some other guys, some guys that fit really well, some that aren't necessarily the eye catchers. I first think of Blake Fisher. Now he's got rocky tape. He's had a rocky offseason. He measures really well, but it's not been the best athletic testing that you've seen. He definitely seems like a Colts type, just kind of an athletic, traitsy type guy who's raw and you really need to work on. I'd say kind of the same for Javonte JEAN-BAPTISTE as well, the edge.
Yeah, I agree. And it just, Blake Fisher he puzzles me, because he has the traits, you look, he's got long arms. He's athletic overall. He doesn't have the best athletic testing numbers, like you said. I think his RAS is in the 7s. Typically the Colts are looking for guys that are in the high 8s to 9s, but and you think with how his makeup is that he would be a better tackle, but he has some consistency issues, and I think that's the biggest thing that stands out. He still seems like he's pretty raw in his development. So if you're a team that's looking to go after an athletic athletic offensive tackle. He's not as athletic as Blake Freeland, but he's got some of the same traits. It's going to take some time to work with Blake Fisher. So if you're looking in the mid rounds for a swing tackle, a guy that you're not expecting to play right away, really need to just refine his game, then yeah, I could see a team taking a chance on Blake Fisher, because everything physically is there. It's just about putting it all together on the field. And then JEAN-BAPTISTE, I mean, again, a long athletic pass rusher. He did not work out yesterday, but when we talked to him after the pro day, Drake asked him a really good question about his versatility and what separates him as a pass rusher. And I think he said, being able to use his quickness, use his athletic ability to really get after the quarterback. So again, these are the types of guys that you see teams bet on late in the draft, in those mid to mid rounds, day 3, because they have those athletic traits, and the coaches have confidence that they're able to mold these guys into quality players. So typically Notre Dame has a few of these guys every single year, just because of the type of program that they are. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw these guys go early on, anywhere really on day 3, whether it's early for Blake Fisher. I think JEAN-BAPTISTE is probably, you're looking at the later rounds on day 3, but both really athletic prospects that coaches are going to want to get their hands on.
Yeah, when it comes to Fisher, I think that now they don't go based off RAS, and they have their own metrics, I'm sure, but
Right.
It's pretty comparable. I still think it's a little low for them to take anywhere before like round 7. That feels like a flyer type move to me. Now, I have heard buzz of him being like maybe as early as a 3rd round pick if some team is really intrigued by the potential there. But if he's there in like the 7th round or something, perhaps the Colts make a move if they work him out and he just like really shows out. I think what we know he's capable of athletically, plus what he measures as, is pretty intriguing. But we'll have to see. It just seems like there's more there for him than what he's shown. And then again, of course, JEAN-BAPTISTE. They love their traitsy raw edge rushers. The last couple of guys I wanted to mention: linebacker Maris Leafau and the nickel corner Thomas Harper. Now Leafau is another long athletic linebacker, off-ball linebacker. Has some problems. We talked to some people who cover Notre Dame. Has some problems identifying run and pass sometimes, and can maybe over pursue things. That to me sounds a lot like Segun Olubi. Could be a special team standout. That's one thing we heard, get this guy on special teams and let him really show out until he's ready to play defensively. And then Thomas Harper, the nickel corner. Every player I heard who spoke yesterday after their workouts, when they were asked, who stood out to you, every one of them said Thomas Harper. A really solid athletic testing, jumped out of the gym with the vertical broad and 40. And I thought he had an up and down field working out with the DBs, but his athletic testing was terrific.
42-inch vertical. Jumping out of the gym is the correct term for Thomas Harper. So yeah, a guy that definitely, I don't think he's reached his full potential yet. Still another guy that's pretty raw. So that's a guy late on day 3 that you could possibly see taking a flyer on. But I think Leafau is very interesting, because of the need the Colts have for a pass catching linebacker, or I'm sorry, a pass coverage linebacker. Yes, he does have some trouble identifying run versus pass, but the way he was moving yesterday in those drills, I mean, you can see why he was Notre Dame's best pass coverage linebacker. So if the Colts are looking to again, they need to add some linebacker depth, I think. You have Zaire Franklin locked down. EJ Speed is entering the final year of his deal. And behind that, because Shaquille Leonard is no longer here, I mean, you don't really have much. You have Segun Olubi, which you're like, okay, that's that's okay depth. But if Zaire Franklin or EJ Speed go down, you could be in a really vulnerable position at linebacker. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Colts look to add a linebacker on day 3, another guy that that has really high athletic traits that they can kind of mold into their own, because they've done it with Zaire Franklin, they've done it with EJ Speed, and you can probably expect the next linebacker to go the same way. So but Le'Veon is very interesting. I would like to see dive into his tape a little bit more to see how problematic he is as far as diagnosing a play, but the athleticism is there, and you could see it pretty quickly on the field. Now, can he translate that to the NFL game and end up being a linebacker that can be used on not only just in passing situations, but on rundowns as well?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's another one of those guys you want to go back and see what the film looks like, because I'm feel fairly confident they're going to take at least one linebacker on day 3, and Chris Ballard has a pretty decent hit rate on those type of guys. So I would definitely put Le'Veon in the conversation. I thought he stood out a little bit the Senior Bowl as well. I made a couple mental notes about him. Oddly enough, in the run game, if I remember correctly, well, JD Bertrand, I feel like made a play in the pass game. So they kind of, switched roles a little bit there. But that's about it from what we saw from the Notre Dame Pro Day. Hopefully, like us, this has you going back to watch a couple of these guys, seeing if they fit a bit. The ones who I comfortably say fit with the Colts are Estime and Hart for sure. The rest of these guys, you can make an argument for it. Maybe we see the Colts work some of them out in between now, the next 5 weeks. Maybe local Pro Day guys, we'll have to see about that. But don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available to you guys on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. And then the belle of the ball this time of year, the Indy Draft Guides pre-orders are now open. Plenty of work in there from Zach. He's reported that it is just about tied up. Andrew has poured a lot into this as well. And for $8.99 with code DRAFTMAS, DRAFTMAS, you can get access to an essential piece of reading for Colts fans both before and after the draft. Because, again, after the draft, if there's guys you don't know everything about, you go right to this guide and you figure it all out. So it's featuring 225-plus in-depth scouting reports, features, and much, much more. Click the link in our show notes to pre-order today. And if you guys don't already, of course, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at Andrew Moore NFL on Twitter. Also, be sure to subscribe here if you don't already on YouTube and wherever you're listening to podcasts. Same with the Horseshoe Huddle podcast right after this. Go over to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening or watching, and hit subscribe, because if you like us, you will definitely like what Andrew and Drake bring to the table as well. And with that, we will see you guys later.